That's correct. Okay, so do you want to do the opening introduction for us today, bro, please?
Yes, indeed. Welcome along to our podcast weekly, The Alien Spaceship. I am Trevor Gear, and he calls me Bruv.
And I am Emmy Hickins, and he calls me Cuz. Welcome to the alien spaceship. So today we're going to be looking at conscience and God's instinct.
Yep. Sounds
God,
good. Sounds good.
yeah, it does, it does. Now it was interesting because when I looked at the definition of conscience, this is what I got. It said, no, I looked at it in contrast with instinct. So let's look at conscience first. So it says conscience is your learned moral compass that evaluate choices based on ethics and society, whereas instinct is an innate automatic biological drive geared towards survival. So that's instinct.
Mhm.
That is understandable, but conscience is learned is your learned moral compass. So which means this conscience that we all have as humans, I believe we all have a conscience, as we all have as humans, is based on what we feed it. I remember when I did computer language years ago. I can't remember what it's about now, but I did computer language and it has since evolved quite a lot since then. So a lot of the things that I learned then is gone. Well, it's been replaced by, newer technology and programs and stuff like that. But yeah, so what I learned in computer language then was there was a phrase that might compass. So which means this conscience that we all have as humans. Right. Sorry about that, viewers.
You said that without moving your lips.
Oh dear me. Yeah. So my lecturer at the time, he said computer programming language is garbage in, garbage out. And and he explained it, he said what he essentially means is you cannot get you cannot get out of a computer what you don't feed it.
Mm.
So the language that you use to write a program or a file that you've saved somewhere, if you don't save any files there, you don't write any programs, it's just an empty box, your computer, your PC or whatever. So it's all made up. Now, we're now looking at conscience as something that is learned and based on a moral compass. Now,
Mm.
that moral compass, as we all know, can be corrupted, just like a computer hard drive could be corrupt. And all the information that is saved in there gone
Yeah.
or somehow unretrievable. Now, when we look at conscience, we're looking at learned moral compass. What is it? What is what is the learning about? Because we already have the conscience. It's there. It's there as humans. We all have one. Now we now have to learn or teach this compass, as they say, or learn this compass, how to be good conscience or compass or whatever. What is that trying to tell us?
Yeah, just to clarify, you started off by saying that conscience, which you looked into, is something essentially that's learned, that we're
Yeah,
taught that.
yeah.
But that you just sort of concluded by saying that we all have a conscience. Do you mean we all have a conscience at the point of being born, where we're born in, is part of our instinct, do you think? Or is instincts distinct from a conscience?
That's a very
Well,
good question, actually. That's one that I didn't envisage, or I didn't envisage you asking. But now, conscience is like a piece of this is the only way that I can describe it. It's like a piece of computer or a piece of gadget, or your television set, for instance. Now, your television set is just a television set. If you don't have a receiver or cable or an antenna or whatever, you're likely to get nothing. The television is there.
mm,
It's called a television, but it's not doing its job, is it? You're not receiving anything. I think that's what the compass is. So the compass is there. I mean, sorry, the conscience. I keep saying compass. The conscience is there. Now, you now have to tell this conscience what to do. It's already there. So we're all born with it. It's there. So it will tell you this thing is good and that thing is not good. So this is bad and this is good, right?
Mm.
But it can only tell you that based on what you train it to tell you. Is that correct? Am
Yeah,
I right?
yeah, just trying to work out. You say, and I understand your point about a television. If there's not a receiver and other parts of it, it won't work as a television. And I think there's a very good phrase which I remember from years ago, and that is, "Ships are safe in harbour, but that's not what ships are for." And I think that almost touches on what you said, that we may have the television, we may have the conscience, but it needs directing, it needs some action. But then I suppose I would ask, are we saying that we really are born with a conscience? It might lead to the question, do we believe that some people are born inherently bad? Because if we all start off with some sort of a conscience,
Mm,
I mean, recently when we talked about the human mind and things like that, it's broadly said that 50% of what we are, of our personalities, are genetic, are that they're inbuilt based on our parents, their genes, and all going right back through our ancestors. So 50% of our personalities broadly are genetic. The other 50% has to do with our environments, how we're brought up, how we're loved or not loved, as the case may be. And that
mm,
that that side obviously then interacts with our stuff that's already there to create a personality. So
mm,
really we're all a mix of all sorts of things, because in the upbringing side of it, it's not just upbringing, but it's as we grow, as we get older, we mix with other people at school or wherever. So we're taking in things at a vast rate. So I think one of the things we spoke about a couple of weeks ago was or perhaps we didn't, perhaps it's something I'd like to do in the future, but about the human eye.
mm.
It actually takes in about 14 million images a second. Now, we can't imagine that, can we? And,
No.
and the same thing, really, of our mind. It's reflective of our minds that if you think, whatever we're doing, we have this wonderful thing we called vision, which basically is tunnel vision in the sense that we see what's directly in our focus, what we're looking at. The rest of it, the peripheral vision, is actually not 20/20 vision, as they say. It's not perfect vision because it just cannot be. But this incredible thing we call eyesight is taking in all these images, 14 million at least every second. And in the same way, those images are going through our brain or to our brain and giving us impressions. And our brain forms impressions and decisions about what we're seeing, what we're taking in every single second. So there's no way we, as the recipient of what the brain is doing, we can't sort of be aware of all the things that are happening up there. So,
Mm,
yes, what we are, including our conscience, is a real, what's the word, a sort of a smorgasbord of everything that's coming at us all the time. But you
mm.
could say mainly our early years, our parents, how they treat us, how we get on at school, and all those things that happen. So that develops our conscience. Now, we have the problem with this, I guess, that
Yeah.
you can have no one has a perfect upbringing nor a perfect set of genes from their parents and ancestors, of course not.
Mm,
But some have it pretty good. And you can still find many examples of people who have a great set of genes, if you like, in their makeup, that they are brilliantly brought up, intelligent people, and yet they can still do bad things. We're all capable of doing bad things, hopefully not at any extreme end of things, but people do still do bad things. And you say, well, do they have a conscience? Are they aware of right and wrong? That's the
mm,
great thing about conscience. The important part, do we
mm,
know the difference between right and wrong?
mm.
So I guess it's all about upbringing. It's also about genetics, and we develop from there. And then of course, we're passing on our own interpretation of life, our life, and others to those around us. Everyone we see and integrate with is teaching us something, and we're teaching them something about this incredible existence that we sort of take so much for granted.
Mm.
So conscience is an interesting thing, and how that truly relates to instinct, well, this is what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yep.
The
Yep.
other thing you mentioned, I noticed, was gut instinct. So what did you mean by gut instinct in your introduction on this?
Well, let's look at what the definition of gut instinct is. So let's look at that
Yeah.
first of all, and then we can just draw our own conclusions based on what is telling us. It says it, it triggers. So it says instinct or gut instinct triggers quick, unfiltered, unfiltered
Right.
reaction to physical needs. So it filters reaction to physical need. So it doesn't have to be right, does it? Instinct.
No. Well,
Yeah,
no,
in
no.
comparison to conscience. Instinct
Yeah.
could just be something that you feel, and we know our feelings could be somehow uh, eh, not right, if that's the simple way to put it. So we could have a right or wrong feeling about something, and we could think that what that feeling that we have about that thing being wrong could actually be us being wrong about that thing, and that thing is right. So it could go vice versa, can't it? Now, when we look at instinct, it's something that most of us rely on rather than conscience. In my opinion, I think a lot more people rely on instinct rather than conscience. Because instinct tells you to make a quick decision. It just tells you
Mm.
do it. Yeah, you do it. It feels right. You could have two roads, and you're not sure of which one is going direction that you want to go. And you just look at it, you feel, well, this one looks like the one that I'm supposed to take, and you take that road, and it might end up not being, or it could end up being right. And so your gut instinct tells you, I told you, follow me, and I will. But it's not always like that, is it? Sometimes
No.
it leads you the wrong way. So I suppose in that way, it's different from conscience, because conscience it helps you. It makes sort of an informed decision. It doesn't just make a decision. It makes it based on the information that is gathered, throughout the years, for instance. That's why a child's conscience is different from an adult's conscience. A child's conscience is mostly based on, because there's not much years of experience behind the judgment that a child's conscience would make. And so gut instinct, or instinct as we'll call it, it's inbuilt as well. Just like conscience, it's inbuilt, but it it can lead us, and so can our conscience as well. If our conscience
Mm.
is not based, because it says morals, so it's a moral compass. Now, if our conscience is not based on good morals, we're not going to be making good decisions either. And it's the same thing like instinct. So it could be said, and I'm really treading on dangerous grounds here, but it could be said that when your conscience is not based on good morals, you're not relying on your conscience, but rather you're relying on your instincts. Would that be right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I see what you mean. Yeah. And I think also the actual expression gut instincts is quite different. I think it shouldn't include the word instinct, in my opinion, because instinct, I think, is something we by definition we don't learn it. It's there. And if you think of a little cat when it's born,
Yeah.
it comes out and it seems to know exactly how to clean itself, even though it's tiny.
Oh
Take a
yeah.
little horse. If you've ever seen a horse being born,
Yeah.
within seconds it can wobbly in a wobbly way, but it can stand on its legs. Now, all those things are not taught to them. It's part of the genetic instincts of those animals. And I think, whereas we say gut instinct, I think gut instinct is not really to do with the fact that, as a human, for example, a baby is born its instinct tells it how to swallow, that it needs food, and it you don't teach a baby to swallow, it just happens. It breathes instinctively. We do all those things, I think, as a matter of instinct. If we're talking about gut instinct,
Mm.
well, as an example, it, as we all know, it doesn't always work. I think I said on our other podcast, The Football Referee, that I had a gut
Yeah.
instinct this year that England were going to win the World Cup. So
Yeah.
that really went belly up, didn't it? So my gut instincts there was wrong. But I think gut instinct is more about intuition, a feeling you get about somebody or about a situation. And it's almost like a sixth sense in some people. Some people have a strong sense of intuition about life, about decisions they're going to make, and they feed that sort of gut feeling into the decision. Whereas
Mm.
others are perhaps a bit more black and white, a bit mechanical, and in those ways. So yeah, gut instincts I don't think really has to do with instinct. And again, we can ask all sorts of questions coming on from this. Is humanity, you know, do we have a positive sense of right or wrong within our instinct? Are we born? Again, you may put it as conscience or instinct. Are we born with this sense of right or wrong? If we look at young children, young toddlers, they're very good at saying, I want this, I want that. No doubt we all did that as children, because there seems to be an instinct, a human instinct in young children, that they want everything they can possibly have, or that looks attractive, or that tastes nice. And they have to gently be trained into the idea that, you can't always have everything you want. I mean, there's a Rolling Stone song, isn't there? You can't always get or have what you want.
Mm.
And that's a lesson we all are taught. So that becomes part of our conscience, maybe, or future instincts. So yeah, there's a lot of questions, but for me, it raises the question: are we as a species a successful species? Because if we're actually all out for ourselves, we're only interested as a species in what is important to us. We're vying for territory, for land, for resources, are we only concerned about ourselves, or is there a more spiritual side to us that instinctively wants to look out for others, to look out to others? I mean, that to me is a question. What would you say to that? Do we have an instinct to want to consider the plights of other people, for better or worse, or ultimately it's all about me and my family and stuff like that? What do you think?
Yeah, it would then depend on what our morals are shaped around or molded on, or the principles that our conscience is molded on. So if, for instance, if you've come from a family of, you know, royalty, for instance, um, your principles and your morals is based on what respect people give you, because your consciousness tells you that's what you want, and that's what you should demand. This is how you're brought up. You know, you're not, you're above a lot of other people. And if you act that way, then they see you that way. But if you don't, then they won't see you that way. And so that's for the royalty. Now, if you was brought up in a really poor family or a middle class family, for instance, working class, middle class, now your your principles might be slightly different in that you know your family, you see your dad as that man that wakes up in the morning, no matter what no matter what mood he's in, he has to get up in the morning and go to work. And if you're ever privileged, not privileged, but if you're ever in the same vicinity with the management of the company that he works for, you would see the way that he treats his boss,
Mm.
and you would see that, he's not really he's not really got that much of a self-esteem around. Oh, not that, but he's got a lot of he's got to be slightly humble or humbler around his those he calls his superior at work. And that would shape your thinking as well. You know, you think,
Mm.
well, oh, there are certain people that I have to be a bit more not myself really, or the way that I would normally act. But then before that, you're also being trained at school. The school system teaches you how you are to behave. And there's a concept of time as well that is instilled in you as well. There's time for everything. There's time you're supposed to be here by a certain time. And you start relating into your dad and your mom and dad, if they are professionals or working professionals as well, they would sort of instill that in you as well. This is how life is, they tell you.
Mm.
But it's different from the person from the royal household. You know, they think, well, you know, I wake up when I want, when I want to wake up. And I want what I want when I want it. And you better bring it, or else, you know, you're going to be replaced. So, you know, there's different, and then you grow up, and then life tells you, or people tell you, all men are equal. And you think, but how is that possible? I know all men are not equal. I've seen my dad around his boss, the way that I act at school. Probably you might be lucky to actually go to a school where there are students that are being shown a form of favoritism by, you know, the school authority, maybe because of who their parents are. For instance, if you have a child whose dad or who's one of or both parents are celebrities, it's different. The way they treat that person is different. So it then makes you question where your morals are supposed to be, because their morals are going to be different from yours, 100%. They're from a different household. They speak to people differently. You speak to people differently. You act around people differently. And if you're brought up with somebody, or if you go to school with somebody whose parents are aggressive, or there's a lot of violence in their household, you see that filter through as well in the way that they behave. They might start bullying other students, or or entertaining violent behavior, you know. And so then that's where the conscience starts to play a part, don't it? Because then you're looking at your conscience is telling you what that person is doing, or how that person
Mm.
is conducting themselves, or his or herself is not the right way to conduct oneself. But then if you spend more time, or the more time you spend around that person, you start to adopt it. It's never the other way around. You never you never get a good person spending time with a bad person and that person becoming good. You always get a good person spending time with somebody that is bad, and they start to pick up on their bad. You seem to disagree with that. I can see you nodding your head. I'd
No,
like to
well,
hear
yeah.
your I'd like to
I
hear
was
your
surprised what you said there because I'm not sure where the evidence for that is. I would imagine that it could almost be the other way. If you start off above the line, so we say good, and there's somebody below the line, then I'm not sure that if they became friends, that the person below the line would be attracting the good person into bad habits and things like that. Whereas I like to think the other way around could be the
oh
case that
wow.
if someone
Okay.
gets to know somebody who's doing some good things,
All right.
um, that they may be drawn towards that. Because in some ways, when we think about the fact that life isn't fair. Some people are born into miserable circumstances, and then all the way up the spectrum to people born into, shall we say, luxury or very very good circumstances. And in
Mm.
some ways, it's possible to become a bit disheartened and think, well, what hope does humanity have? Because we still see dreadful things in the world, don't we? And people appearing to have no conscience at all, and they have very bad instincts to want to hurt other people. So we could kind of give up. I suppose a lot of it depends on our own. thinking, whether we have confirmation bias of a negative attitude to things or positive. And I think very often, if we actually believe ultimately that there is good in most situations, in most people, even if it's a bit hidden sometimes, hidden
Mm,
in all of us on occasions, it's still there. That instinct, that right instinct to be right rather than wrong,
mm.
should hopefully win the day. And if we look hard enough, we will see a lot of evidence of good behaviour. Much of it under the radar. Let me just read you something that I saw the other day,
Okay.
and I think it is based on a true situation which happened in New York. And there's very small writing here, but I'll do my best to read it. A woman walked into a small restaurant one afternoon to have lunch alone. She ordered her meal and quietly waited while the restaurant buzzed with conversation around her. A few minutes later, the waiter placed a warm plate of food in front of her. Just as she was about to start eating, she noticed something through the window. Outside, standing near the glass, was a father and his young daughter. They weren't begging, they weren't knocking on the door, they were simply looking at the food with tired, hungry eyes. The little girl kept glancing at the woman's plate before quickly looking away again, almost embarrassed to be caught staring. For a moment, the woman looked down at her own meal. Then she smiled and gently motioned for them to come inside the restaurant. The father hesitated at first, clearly uncomfortable, but eventually he and his daughter slowly entered the restaurant and sat at the table beside her. The woman handed them the menu and kindly said, "Order whatever you like." The little girl shyly looked toward the dishes being served around the restaurant, while her father quietly tried to refuse out of pride. But the woman insisted. Soon, two hot meals were brought to their table. Excuse me. As the father and daughter began eating, the woman watched silently. The little girl smiled between bites, and the father's eyes filled with gratitude he could barely put into words. For a short moment, their worries seemed to disappear. After finishing their food, the father stood up, thanked the woman sincerely, and left with his daughter, both carrying smiles that hadn't been there before. Later, when the woman finished her own lunch, she walked to the counter to pay the bill. But when the waiter handed it to her, she noticed something unusual. It was totally blank. Instead, there was a handwritten note from the restaurant owner. "We don't have a calculator capable of measuring the value of humanity." The woman stood there speechless, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes something far greater than money can ever repay. And in a world where many people walk past suffering without noticing it, compassion remains one of the most powerful things a person can offer. And I read that, and it sort of is quite moving in its way, because what it also says to me that there are countless acts every day like that, I think, going on right around us. But sometimes we tend to, because of the news cycle telling us, if we actually these days bother to watch the negative news, telling us so many things to worry about that show the bad side of humanity, we forget really that if there was a daily newspaper giving the good stories, it would completely overwhelm all the bad stuff, which is not to say we shouldn't be aware of the problems in society and of being human. And, humans can have a very negative approach to things, but also a very positive approach. And yeah, so this kind of little story, um, it rings a lot of bells in us, doesn't it? To say, yeah, compassion is a very important thing. Something else I saw the other day, and I'll ask you the question. It
Go on.
went along the lines: if you met you, would you like you? And I thought that's quite a good question to make us look a bit inwardly and say, how do we come across in life? Now, I'm not saying we should become obsessed about that, because then it becomes a bit egocentric. But if you were introduced to you, would you like you?
The simple answer would be no, I wouldn't.
It was a very quick answer, not sort of given with much thought. So why do you say that then?
Well, because I think I am a little bit annoying, so As my brother and my wife would say, you know.
I say, was this a conversation you had with your wife last night or something like that? But you don't really mean that, do you? Do you really mean that you're annoying?
I don't know. I think, like you beat yourself up for something that you think you could have done better, or you could have handled in a much more, in a different way. And you,
Yeah.
you just constantly beat yourself up about it. And you think, oh, no, I should have done that. Now the opportunity is gone. And what does this person think of me? You think, oh, no, it must have. But sometimes it's not always as bad as it seems. You could end up beating yourself up for something, and somebody might just make you see it in a different light. They might say, well, look at it this way. And then they present a different scenario, and you think, oh, yeah, maybe I'm not such a bad person after all. But I think what that would do for you, the first scenario, you're looking at yourself and being very, very critical of yourself. What that would then do for you would help you to not have an egotistic view or an egotistical view of yourself, not seeing yourself as something that you're not. And it would help you to, as they say, stay grounded and stay humble, and see that there will always be room for improvement. It would always help you to see that you can always improve on that. So it's like a football team winning a trophy, and then thinking, well, we've won a trophy. We don't need to try to win another trophy. We're happy. Let other people win their own trophies. It's a good thing to think, well, let other people go ahead and achieve the same feat that we've achieved. However, it would then, because they say when if you're not moving forward and you're standing in one place, you're definitely regressing. You might not know it, but you are. So humans, we're made to want to advance, to want to progress, to want to
Yeah.
better ourselves, have a better version of yourself. Now, that would mean that somebody else might be there thinking they want your life. They want what you've already achieved, let alone what you're trying to achieve. They think, well, hang on a minute, at least you have a house, at least you have this, at least you have that. What do I have? That would make you appreciate what you've got, but it certainly would not slow you down as to achieving more, would it? You want to, and as such, I like to look at myself as not being a good person.
Why is that then? Do you mean that?
Well, well, just so I can better myself. Because if I
Yeah,
start to look at myself as a good person, then I think, yeah, I'm a good person. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. I don't care what the whole world thinks. I'm a better person, and that stops there. And so I don't want to fall into that trap or that danger of self-elevation, looking at myself and thinking, yeah, yeah, I'm a good person. I'm not a good person because I could be a better person. I could be a better version of myself. So I'm always pushing myself. And I'm not in competition with anybody. I don't look at what other people have got or what other people have achieved or how good a deed other people have done to either the whole world or to a particular individual for that matter. What I look at is what I can do to keep progressing. I see as a progress. I see good morals as a progress. I see being nice to people as a progress. I see being helpful to people as a progress. And I don't want to stop. So I don't want to look at myself as a good person. Not yet, anyway.
no, no.
Yeah.
So, if scientists could genetically engineer humans and eradicate all the negative traits, because nowadays they do know what genes do what in many cases. Um, should that happen, if they could genetically engineer future humans so that all the negativity, in other words, crime, inclination, and stealing, all the stuff that would be we would view as negative, violence, anything else, if that could be eradicated out of humanity over a couple of generations, would you
Mm.
say that's quite a good thing, or would you think it's dangerous, or what?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna look at the aspect of it's not possible. But I'm just gonna try and answer the question. So if scientists could engineer me to be better, because I'm striving to be better. It's like it's like me trying to get to from A to B, for instance, from one point physically travel to the next point. Now, I know there's limited time that in life generally there is limited time for you to do everything that you want to do. Now, if I'm trying to get from A to B and somebody says, "Hey, I'll give you a lift from A to B," saves me a lot. Saves me the physical exertion. It saves me the time traveling, walking to get there if I have to walk. It saves me a lot of stress. Saves me the sweat,
Mm.
physical sweat actually, especially in this weather. Now, if somebody says, I'll give you a lift. Oh, don't worry, just hop in the car. I'll give you a lift. Now, there are certain things that you would miss along the way. You would miss the exercise, right? Your heart needs it. Your body needs it. You'd miss that. You would also miss the scenery, enjoy the view, you'd miss that because this thing is going that fast and it just crosses all these places and it goes really fast and you'd miss that. So there's a lot of things that you would miss. So in as much as you'd gain some things, you would miss some things. Now, if scientists offered me the opportunity, me trying to better myself, me trying to be a better version of myself, and they say, you can just take this pill and voila, you are there. I wouldn't take it.
Really, it's
I wouldn't.
interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that pill. Maybe a younger version of myself, a 21-year-old version of myself would. Because I'm thinking, I need to impress. I
Mm.
need to impress in my next relationship. I need to be there. I need to show the world I'm one of them, right? I need I need to be there. I need to get there. But now I've sort of I've sort of it's not I've sort of adopted a relaxed view to life. I think to myself, what if you get all those things? You get it when you're supposed to get it. You're 22 years old, you got all the strength, and you get it, right? You'll miss out on a lot of things in life. Because you have this money, you become pompous, you're not ready for it. Your brain is not ready for it.
Mm.
It's not ready for it's like people that attain stardom a bit too early in life. Like one of the One Direction, one of the group members of the One Direction, or the band members of the One Direction, end up killing himself, didn't it? Well, we don't know that. It might have been pushed, we don't know, but suicide, that is a real thing. It is a real thing. And that is all because, and I'm not attributing it solely to that, but I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that could be a huge factor in driving that young man to his life because he's achieved everything. It's like a football manager. You win everything there is to win. What are you still doing there? You see them, they just want to retire. They think,
Mm.
I've done this, I've done that. Even the club will be looking at you and thinking, what do you want to do? And it'd be boring as well. It'd be boring. You have everything you want, everything you could ever want. It'd be boring. Sometimes it's good to struggle in life. Sometimes it's good to, and I'm not saying, and I know people that are struggling are listening to this and thinking, No, not really. I don't want to struggle. Yeah. Yeah, you want to struggle. It's part of life. You need that stress. If you don't have that stress, you've got something else. You've got people that are born into royalty and yet they're bored. What are you bored of? You got all the money, you got everything. But it's life. Whatever stage you skip in life, life always has a way of bringing you back to that stage. Either mentally or physically, you will get back there. You will go back there and complete that stage. That's
Mm,
life. And so at this stage in my life, I look at everything and I think, well, whatever comes, comes. All I know is it won't last. Nothing lasts forever. If it's hard times, it doesn't last. If it's good times, it doesn't last. So it's meant to keep rotating, as they say. Yeah. So
yeah.
I wouldn't take that pill.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the phrase, isn't it? This too shall pass. It means
Mm,
both sides of things, that bad things will pass eventually as well as good things. But I
yeah.
think also what you said there is very relevant, because it's like saying that we can't really have the perfect ideal situation for individually, perhaps, or for humans. It probably wouldn't work, because so much a part of life is the struggle, the learning
Yes,
process.
it is.
And if scientists eradicated all of the negative from the human genome,
Mm,
then we'd have a load of I suppose we'd all be a load of robots walking around with,
that's it.
kindly expressions on our faces and doing great things, which you could argue is the aspiration of many religions, that we're all, they want people to go towards this loving each other and all those things which we would say, yeah, that's good, that's desirable. But perhaps there's no destination that could ever be reached. It is all
No,
about the journey, and I think that's humanity, and I think that's individually for all of us as well. It's all about the journey, not hopefully always a struggle, but the journey, for better or worse.
it is. Yeah. So this is all we've got time for on the alien spaceship. We would love to continue forever because it's a very good, it's a very interesting topic. But join us again next week as we bring you more fresh topics. And Brav is always here to to talk us through it.
We agree
So
sometimes, don't we? We agree
we
sometimes.
we do, don't we? Yeah. So join us again next week. I've been you've been watching the Alien Spaceship, and I've been Emmy Hickens, and he calls me bruv.
And I'm
He call,
Trevor Gear, and he calls me bruv.
he calls me cuz. He calls me cuz.
I do.
It's it's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from
Oh,
me.